Hey, all, TC here. Responding to James Griffiths' great new thread, Gimme 10 on A&M Records. I grew up in the 70s. A&M was one of my favorite labels. Favorite labels. I'm a soft music kind of guy. I'm a pop music kind of guy. And while I like the acts that had a little bit more harder edge, like Supertramp and Sad Cafe and Nazareth and those, I lean toward the softer acts. So what I've done is I've gone through some of those. I have an 11th one I'm going to show, but only for the label. And pulled out stuff you've probably never heard of, which is normal for my collection. The biggest act I remember on A&M was my favorite act of all time, Carpenters. This is a song for you from 1971 or 72. Let me look real quick here. Doesn't give the date. I believe it's 72. This includes the original version of Top of the World, not the single version. Plus, it's going to take some time. Goodbye to Love and I Won't Last a Day Without You. This is one of the several Carpenters albums that came out that has the classic tan or brown A&M logo, which is the one that I grew up with all my childhood, starting with the Tijuana Brass in the 1960s. But really love Carpenters, and they're terrific. Another act from the 70s I loved, Captain and Tennille. Captain and Tennille were huge with Love Will Keep Us Together. This was their breakthrough album, their debut album. Also featured The Way I Want to Touch You. This was one of the first albums. I think the logo was introduced, the new A&M logo from the mid-70s was introduced on the Carpenters singles 69 to 73 and the fall of 73, but this is the label that came out, and this is the one that most people remember if you're born in the 70s or the late 60s. The first single I remember getting with this was a Carpenters single, the seasonal re-release of Merry Christmas Darling and the ballad version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, 1974. But that's the first place I remember seeing that label. We lost Daryl Dragon last year. Of course, he is the captain of Captain and Tennille, and he is sorely missed by so many people. Tony's still out there, still doing music and such. Also from the 70s, I don't know if you remember them, this is Alessi. This album is Driftin', featured a hit song called, let me get the title right, Dancing in the Halls of Love. Their earlier self-titled album on A&M featured a hit called Oh Lori, which was a bigger hit in Europe than it was in America, and it did do well, sort of well. It did hit the Hot 100, but it didn't make the top 40. The Alessis are still singing, still doing new albums. Their most recent CD came out in 2019. They're terrific. If you've never heard of them, look them up. They're very soft pop. In the same vein as like England Dan and John Ford Coley or something like that. They are terrific. And that also had the white label. A band I talked about, I tried to find stuff I hadn't showed before, but this one I just showed, and not that many people know it because I just got it. This is The Rays and Dancing Up a Storm. The Rays were a Canadian version of the Captain Tennille. Robbie and Cheryl Ray had their own TV show for 2 seasons on CBC. Big hit in Canada with a rather weird disco version of Que Sera Sera. This features their only American hit, A Little Lovin' Keeps the Doctor Away. And of course it does have that classic A&M label. They were terrific. Robbie's no longer with us either. He passed away in 2010. But Cheryl, last time I looked on Wikipedia, is still going strong as a top entertainer with Carnival Cruise Lines. Can't talk about A&M over the years without talking about Sergio Mendes. Sergio Mendes, this is his first big album from the 80s. Hit in the 60s with Mas Canada and Fool on the Hill, Casino Royale's song The Look of Love. A lot of great stuff. This album, which features the hit Never Gonna Let You Go, performed by Joe Pizzullo, and I don't remember her name. I believe it's Lisa Miller. And I can't really see it. I'm sorry. If I've got the name wrong, I apologize. Terrific early soft pop of the 80s. And Mendes was always great, of course. He, of course, is the band leader and the arranger and does great stuff. I also love his album Confetti with the hit Olympia on it from the 80s. Band I love that nobody else heard of, Espionage from 1983. Synth pop at its early finest. This was not really well known. They had a minor hit that actually, I think it peaked at 102 or 103 on Billboard's Hot Bubbling Under chart called The Sound of Breaking Hearts. I actually had a shoving match over the last copy of the single at my local store because I wanted it. I picked up the album later. Terrific stuff. If you've not heard it, seek it out, because if you like Human League, if you like Howard Jones, Duran Duran, Kajagoogoo, you'll like Espionage. Also from the mid-'80s, the voice of Tommy Pickles herself, E.G. Daily, also the voice of Buttercup from the Powerpuff Girls. This is E.G.'s debut album, Wild Child, from 1985, I believe. Maybe 84. That's one thing, I never checked the dates. I should do that more often. This includes her huge dance hit, Say It, Say It, which was a minor pop chart hit, and a great cover of Donna Summer's song from Bad Girls, Sunset People. This came out right around the time she was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I think it was called. I don't remember, it's been so long since I saw it. Always a dynamic singer. The late 80s, brought a new label for the A&M Records label. They did a red label on the singles, and it's not found on any of the albums that I'm aware of, except on Carpenter's Made in America, which is the only album I've found that has the red A&M label on an album that isn't an A&M Virgin album. All of the A&M Virgin stuff, like Human League, were released on A&M Virgin with the red label, but the albums are hard to come by. Then they changed it up again by the time Brenda Russell's came out in 1986, 1987, 86. Of course, the big hit off this album, Get Here, was Piano in the Dark. The title track would later be a huge hit for Oleta Adams in 1990 or 91 during the Gulf War. This was the first album I can remember having on A&M that had its new black label, which had been introduced, I believe, on the Janet Jackson and mid-'80s stuff from a man I'm going to talk about here in a minute. This is the label that became synonymous with A&M over the late 80s. I don't know how else to show it. It's so dark. And strangely enough, I don't remember that label showing up on singles, only on albums. Maybe it did, but I'd already switched to cassette singles and CD singles by the late 80s. So maybe it did, I don't know. Brenda Russell and Get Here. One of the most criminally underrated, underseen albums of all time, because he got caught in the teen pop backlash of the late 80s, late 80s. It's been a long day, folks. Scott Grimes' debut album. Scott was 16 when he recorded this. He was known for TV, guest spots. He would later become popular as Dr. Archie on ER. This album, which is produced by Richard Carpenter, terrific stuff. He made his debut on Richard's solo album, Time, which came out about 2 years earlier. Scott is just a terrific vocalist, great singer. Later would do a whole concept album in the mid-2000s called Living on the Run that's really worth finding. He is terrific, and this album deserved better than it got. Show Me the Way to Your Heart should have been a monster hit. Nothing. American charts. And you can't talk about A&M without talking about one of the founders, Herb Alpert. Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss co-founded A&M in 1962, and this is one of his 80s albums, Beyond. I love this one. I love Fandango. I love Magic Man. I love Blow Your Own Horn. I love Rise. All of his albums. I'm just starting to finally collect some of the older Tijuana Brass that I used to have on single. I'm starting to get it on albums now. But Herb is just one of the best. He knew good artists when he saw them, and often turned them into superstars. He is directly responsible for the careers of the Carpenters, Captain Sneal, so many other acts in A&M in the early 70s, and just a terrific artist in his own right. So that's my Gimme 10 on A&M. James, I hope you like what I've come up with. I deliberately stayed toward the softer side, and can't wait to see what everybody else is putting up, because I haven't looked at those yet. I didn't want to copy anybody. Okay, so that's Gimme 10 on A&M for James Griffiths, and I'm TC. See you later, VC.